They stole my greenhouse budget in front of 12 department clerks, 3 elder stewards, and 1 monopowered copying mirror that had been stuck on duplicate since breakfast. The worst part was not even the theft. It was the way Varus Lorne smiled while doing it. He leaned back in my chair, put his polished boots on my procurement ledger, and said, "Elian Moss, effective immediately, you are no longer authorized to manage spirit plant acquisitions for the Verdant Ash Sect. Your budget has been reassigned to strategic noble cultivation initiatives." That was his phrase. Strategic noble cultivation initiatives. It sounded expensive because it was expensive. It meant his private orchid pavilion, 6 imported jade mist sprinklers, and a ceremonial pond shaped like his family crest. My name is Elian Moss. I was 29 years old, officially a junior spirit plant procurement clerk, unofficially the man keeping the Verdant Ash Sect's medicinal gardens from collapsing into diseased mud. For 6 years, I bought seeds, audited fertilizer shipments, rotated monosoil, caught invoice fraud, and kept arrogant inner disciples from watering fireroot seedlings with ice element runoff because it felt balanced. I had ink-stained fingers, a salary of 28 low-grade spirit stones a month, and a desk drawer full of emergency soil samples nobody respected until something started dying. Varus had been assistant greenhouse director for 9 days. He was also the sect master's nephew. That meant he had a private sword tutor, a silver name tablet, and the confidence of a man who had never been asked to explain a number on a budget sheet. He tapped my ledger with one lazy finger. "Cheap field herbs," he said, looking around the office so everyone could enjoy the joke. "That is what you know, barley mint, ditch ginseng, muley leaf. We are a great cultivation sect, Elian. We do not need peasant farming habits." Nobody laughed loudly. But several people looked down at their tea. They knew, every clerk in that room knew the South greenhouse had survived 3 root blight seasons because I insisted on rotating moon turnip after silvergrass. They knew the fever petal crop had doubled after I grafted Weak Valley stock onto hardy roadside thorn. They knew the elders called my reports mud gossip and still signed every purchase order I prepared. But a sect is not a place where people defend the person below them. A sect is a place where people wait to see which way power is leaning, then call it wisdom. I looked at the new budget scroll. Original allocation for greenhouse recovery, 9,600 mid-grade spirit stones. Remaining allocation after Varus touched it, 300. He had not even hidden the transfer well, he just renamed it. Decorative elite cultivation infrastructure. I had to respect the laziness. I asked very calmly, "Does Elder Wren know you moved the Blight Recovery Fund?" Varus smiled wider. My uncle approved my authority. "That is not what I asked." His eyes cooled. That was the first moment he stopped finding me funny. I had learned in 2 lives that men like Varus could tolerate incompetence, theft, waste, and even public failure. What they could not tolerate was a clerk asking a precise question in front of witnesses. He stood up and held out his hand. "Your greenhouse seal." The room went quiet. The greenhouse seal was not a badge. It was a thumb-sized wooden token carved from living spirit willow. It let me approve seed orders, inspect restricted beds, release emergency nutrient stores, and sign off on disease containment logs. For 6 years, elders treated it like a spare key. It was not a spare key. I knew that because I was not born in this world. I remembered another life. A smaller one, a dirtier one. A life where my name had been almost the same, where I woke before sunrise on a farm with cracked hands, bad knees, and more knowledge of soil than any sane person wanted. I knew crop rotation because failed rotation had once cost me 40 acres of corn. I knew grafting because a late frost had killed every young apple tree except the ugly ones I had spliced onto stubborn rootstock. I knew disease cycles because mold did not care how much money you prayed at it. Then I died under a collapsed grain silo. I woke up in this world in the body of a 17-year-old outer servant with a fever, no family name worth saying, and a debt contract tied to 300 spirit stones of introductory cultivation resources. The Verdant Ash Sect thought it had acquired another desperate field hand. It had accidentally hired a farmer with 20 years of practical agricultural failure burned into his bones. For 12 years in this world, I stayed quiet. For 6 years in procurement, I stayed useful. And that morning, when Varus Lorne held out his hand for the seal, I understood something with perfect clarity. He thought he was taking my authority. What he was actually taking was responsibility. I removed the cord from around my wrist and placed the greenhouse seal on his palm. The living wood shivered once. Varus flinched, then pretended he had not. I said, "You should have the continuity transfer witnessed by records." He snorted, "I am not asking permission from the basement. I am not talking about permission." "Then stop talking." So I did. I signed the demotion notice. I accepted my new position as temporary caretaker of Greenhouse 9, Western Annex. I accepted the salary reduction from 28 low-grade spirit stones to 11. I accepted the official note that said my duties would now be limited to maintenance of inactive legacy plant assets. That meant dead plants. Specifically one dead plant. The ancient black-veined spirit vine in Greenhouse 9 had been dead for 143 years. At least that was what the sect believed. Varus thought he had buried me in a forgotten glass shed with cracked windows, stale mana lamps, and a plant corpse older than the current sect master's bloodline. He did not know that 3 months earlier, while reconciling a fertilizer invoice, I had found a root hair under the vine's bark. One living root hair. Tiny, pale, stubborn. A farmer respects stubborn. So when Varus asked if I had any final comments before leaving my old desk, I looked at him, looked at the copied budget scroll still glowing in the broken mirror and said, "No, I will follow the reassignment exactly." That made him happy. It should not have. Greenhouse 9 sat behind the western lecture halls, past the broken rainwater cistern and the statue of the third sect master, whose stone face had been eaten by moss until he looked permanently disappointed. Nobody visited it unless they were lost, punished, or hiding from sword practice. The door stuck in damp weather, the roof leaked in 7 places, the mana lamps flickered whenever someone used the nearby teleportation array. The official asset list described the ancient spirit vine as historical botanical remnant, non-productive, ceremonial value only. That was accountant language for "we are not spending money on this." I moved my things there in 2 trips. 1 box of ledgers. 1 cracked teapot. 4 soil knives. A packet of roasted barley. A framed debt receipt showing I had paid off my original servant contract after 9 years, 4 months, and 13 days. And 1 letter from my younger sister in this world, Mara, asking if I could send another 8 spirit stones before the end of the month because her son's lung curse had flared again. That was my pressure point. Everyone has one. Mine was a 7-year-old boy named Tavi who coughed silver dust when the moon was full. The healers called it a hereditary meridian weakness. The billing office called it a recurring treatment obligation. I called it the reason I had swallowed 6 years of insults without making powerful enemies. Every month I paid 36 spirit stones for his medicine. My salary had just been cut to 11. So yes, when people ask if I wanted revenge, the answer is simple. I wanted my nephew to breathe. Revenge was just what happened after Varus got between me and that. Mara sent the letter by paper crane. It landed on my desk beside a dead vine, fluttered once and folded itself into the shape of a bill. That felt personal. I read it twice, then tucked it under the teapot and got to work. The ancient spirit vine looked like a twisted rope of black wood climbing a rusted trellis. Its leaves had fallen before my new body's grandfather was born. Its main stem was hollow in 3 places. Sect records said it had once produced founder's grapes, tiny gold fruits used to stabilize breakthroughs above the 5th cultivation stage. That was why elders still bowed when they passed its old portrait in the main hall. That was also why they avoided Greenhouse 9. Nothing embarrasses powerful people more than a dead symbol. The first thing I did was not pour expensive elixir on it. That was what cultivators always wanted to do. Got a sick plant, drown it in spirit water. Weak roots, add powdered beast core. Yellow leaves, chant louder. In my old life I had watched rich hobby farmers kill orchards by loving them too aggressively. Too much nitrogen, too much water, too much pruning, too much confidence. So I started with dirt. I took 6 samples around the root zone, each from a different depth. I labeled them with string tags because the annex had no working crystal labels. I smelled them. I rubbed them between my fingers. I dissolved pinches in rainwater and watched the sediment settle. The soil was sour. Not emotionally, chemically. The mana balance was worse. Fire-aspected residue in the top layer, water stagnation below, traces of copper salt fungicide from at least 20 years of panic treatments. And underneath all of that, compacted clay so dense the roots could barely breathe. No wonder the vine had gone dormant. The sect had been feeding it like a dragon and burying it like a corpse. I wrote my first Greenhouse 9 recovery memo that afternoon. Recommendation: cease all high-grade elixir application for 30 days. Begin aeration. Introduce low-mana organic matter. Establish 3-bed rotation using muley leaf, ash clover, and bitter bean to rebalance soil. Cost 47 low-grade spirit stones. Expected visible response 21 to 35 days. I sent it to Varus. He rejected it in 11 minutes. His response came through the cracked message mirror in my office, glowing smugly in blue script. Denied. Legacy asset has no production target. Do not waste sect resources attempting peasant methods. I copied his rejection into my ledger. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy. Because my cultivation core warmed. That had started during my 3rd year in procurement. I did not have a strong sword aura. I did not have noble meridians. I had failed the inner disciple exam twice because my spiritual root measured as low-grade wood, unstable earth, negligible combat promise. But every time I completed a correct procurement cycle, my core tightened. Every time I caught a false invoice, my spiritual sense sharpened. Every time an elder rejected a warning that later proved true, the words in my ledger seemed to glow. At first I thought I was imagining it. Then, after my 70-second rejected disease report, I broke through from Foundation Mist Level 2 to Level 3 while sorting moldy receipts. That was when I understood. This world had cultivation paths for swords, fire, ice, beasts, pills, and music. It also had one for consequences. Nobody talked about it because nobody powerful wanted clerks to know accuracy could become strength. I called it root ledger cultivation. Not aloud, I was not stupid. The principle was simple. A living system remembered what fed it and what harmed it. If I documented a true warning, attached it to a real process, and let an authorized superior reject it under seal, the unresolved consequence created pressure. If I then absorbed that pressure without falsifying anything, my core refined it. Boring, yes. Slow painfully. Useful, ask the 72 elders who never noticed the junior clerk becoming harder to lie to. Varus's first rejection pushed a warm thread of energy through my left palm. Milestone 1. My mana capacity rose from 312 units to 319. I wrote the number in the margin. Then I went outside with a shovel. Since I had no budget, I used what the sect considered waste. Stable sweepings from the Cloud Deer barn, fallen ash leaves from the training courtyard, spent tea from the clerk break room, rotten straw from the outer disciple kitchens, crushed eggshell from the cafeteria where the breakfast cook, Auntie Sen, still liked me because I once saved her ginger tubers from root rot. Demoted already? She asked while dumping shells into my bucket. Temporarily reassigned. That means demoted. It does sound better my way. She clicked her tongue. Noble boys, all perfume and no roots. Auntie Sen became my first ally, though she would have denied it. She sent me kitchen scraps, gossip, and one priceless thing: access to the old compost pits behind the cafeteria. My second ally was Lysa Vell, a records clerk with round spectacles, a tired face, and the terrifying habit of reading every footnote. Lysa found me on the 4th evening, elbow-deep in soil, loosening the root zone with a 3-pronged fork. You are aware, she said, that Varus filed your demotion as performance-related. I paused. That mattered. A performance demotion could block severance, appeal rights, and emergency salary protection. What reason? She unfolded a copy: failure to align procurement strategy with noble cultivation priorities. I stared at her. She stared back. Then I said, that is not a performance category. No, she said, it is a sentence wearing a hat. That was why I liked Lysa. She handed me a thin packet wrapped in gray oath paper. I pulled the Greenhouse 9 file after your transfer. There is a continuity clause attached to the living seal. I wiped my hands on my apron. Which seal? The one Varys took. Of course. The living wood had shivered. I opened the packet. The clause was written in old Sect script, the kind with unnecessary curls and very serious consequences. Greenhouse authority may be reassigned by executive order, but responsibility for all dormant founder assets, hidden resource channels, and root-bound ledgers transfers with the seal. The accepting officer assumes full liability for prior, current, and emerging discrepancies unless a certified continuity audit is completed within 15 days. I read it once. Then again. Then I looked at Lysa. She adjusted her spectacles. He did not request a continuity audit. No. He also backdated the transfer by 2 days to make it look cleaner. I felt another warm thread tighten in my core. Milestone 2. Mana capacity, 331 units. I asked how long until the 15 days expire. 11 days 4 hours. And what happens if the vine wakes before then? Lysa's face went very still. That was the thing about records clerks, they always knew where the bodies were buried, they just preferred them alphabetized. She said the founder's root ledger activates. And if the root ledger activates under his seal, then it reports to the authority holder. Meaning Varys. Yes. And if there are discrepancies? Lysa looked toward the dead vine. Then she said very softly, the Sect Council sees everything. I placed the packet on my desk with great care. Then I laughed once. Not loudly. Just enough to scare a spider off the windowsill. Because for 6 years I had tracked procurement discrepancies everyone told me were rounding errors, missing spirit fertilizer, overpriced jade mist, seed shipments that arrived light by exactly 12%, disease treatments purchased for beds that had never existed, high-grade root tonic billed to Greenhouse 9, a dead annex that had received nothing but dust. I had suspected theft. I had documented it. I had been told to stop being dramatic. Now Varys Lorne had stolen my budget, taken my seal, skipped the audit, and placed himself directly on top of 6 years of buried rot. All I had to do was revive the vine. No pressure. Reviving an ancient spirit vine with no budget, a cracked roof, and 11 days before a liability clause expired is not glamorous. The stories make plant cultivation sound elegant. Moonlight, jade watering cans, soft music, beautiful disciples whispering to blossoms. My version involved hauling compost in a laundry basket at dawn while outer disciples pointed and asked if I had been reassigned to garbage. I had. In a way. Very useful garbage. Day 1 I aerated the soil. Not deep enough to shred the living root hair, just narrow channels around the compacted clay so air and water could move again. In my old life we used broadforks. In this world I used a bent ritual rake and a curse word I refused to translate. Day 2 I added ash clover. Ash clover was considered a cheap field herb because it grew anywhere, tasted bitter, and made low-grade healing paste smell like wet socks. Nobles hated it, farmers loved it. It pulled fire residue from soil and fixed wood-aspected mana in the upper layer. Day 3 I planted bitter bean in the outer ring. Bitter bean was ugly, fast-growing, and mildly aggressive. Its roots broke up clay better than any imported spirit worm. The Sect classified it as low-prestige, high-nuisance. That was basically my personal category. Day 4, I grafted a sliver of living bark from the ancient vine onto muleleaf rootstock. This was the part no Sect gardener would try. To them, grafting a founder's vine onto common field stock was disrespectful. To a farmer, rootstock was survival. A noble branch on weak roots dies beautifully. A fragile branch on stubborn roots lives long enough to become inconvenient. I wrapped the graft with linen, sealed it with beeswax from the apiary, and whispered, "No pressure, old thing, just ruin a few careers if you wake up." The vine did not respond. Plants rarely appreciate jokes. Varys sent his first inspection notice on day 5. He arrived with 2 inner disciples, a floating mirror, and the expression of a man hopping to find me dirty enough to confirm his worldview. He found me dirty. He also found 42 labeled soil jars, 3 rotating herb beds, a compost thermometer, and a handwritten moisture chart pinned to the wall. "What is this?" he asked. "Work. It looks like a pig pen. That would improve drainage, but I was denied livestock." One of the inner disciples coughed into his sleeve. Varus glared at him, then turned back to me. "You were told not to waste resources. I have used no restricted resources." He looked at the herb beds. "Those are sect plants. Discarded cafeteria scraps, stable waste, and seeds from expired inventory, all logged." He picked up my moisture chart, frowned at the numbers, and clearly decided not to ask what they meant. "You are assigned to maintenance, not experimentation. I am maintaining soil viability. The vine is dead. So the asset list says." His smile came back. "You really think you can impress the elders by growing weeds around a corpse?" I should have stayed silent. I nearly did. But Tavi's letter was still folded under my teapot, and my salary reduction had posted that morning. 11 stones, minus dorm fees, minus food, minus medicine, minus the fee for breathing in a sect that praised compassion during public festivals. So I said, "The danger with dead things, Director Lorne, is that sometimes they are only waiting for people to stop poisoning them." He stepped closer. "I am your superior. On paper." He liked that even less. "You will submit a daily maintenance report to my office. No recommendations, no budget requests, no unauthorized recovery attempts. You will not contact records, finance, or the medicinal garden elders without my written permission." There it was. A stupid order. Clear, specific, witnessed. I bowed. "As directed." His mouth twitched. "Good." I wrote the daily report that evening. Greenhouse 9 maintenance report, no recommendations included per Director Lorne's instruction. Soil aeration continues, low-grade rotational cover crops established, dormant root zone stable, possible founder vine response intentionally not assessed because recovery activity is unauthorized. I sent it. Lysa appeared 20 minutes later with a copy. "You are being petty," she said. "I am being precise." "That is worse." She was right. Varus approved the report without reading it. The approval seal gave me milestone 3. Mana capacity, 358 units. More importantly, my oath sense sharpened. That was the second stage of root ledger cultivation. At first, I only felt pressure from rejected truths. Later, I began to sense where responsibility attached. A signature had weight. A seal had flavor. Varus's authorization tasted like sugared vinegar, sweet on top, rotten underneath. By day 7, the ash clover had sprouted. By day 8, the bitter bean cracked the topsoil. By day 9, the graft remained green. That was when the first root pulse came. I was half asleep at my desk, cheek on a fertilizer invoice from 5 years earlier when Greenhouse 9 breathed. Not metaphorically. The glass panes fogged, the soil exhaled warm air. The dead vine's black bark showed one thin line of gold so faint I thought my eyes were inventing mercy. Then every ledger in the room opened at once. Pages flipped without wind. Old ink brightened. The founder's root ledger woke under the soil like a giant stretching after a long illness. I felt it look at me. That is the only way I can describe it. Not with eyes, with roots, with memory, with the slow, merciless intelligence of something that had listened to 143 years of lies settling into its dirt. My cultivation core shook. A thread of gold moved from the vine into my palm. Not power like a sword cultivator would understand. No lightning, no dramatic aura, just awareness. I could feel nutrient flow in the greenhouse. I could feel which beds were hungry, which roots were drowning, which old pipes had been diverting spirit water away from the annex for decades. And beyond that, faint but clear, I could feel resource channels. Greenhouse 9 had not been isolated. It had been the original root of the Sect's medicinal garden network. Every spirit stone allocation for plant cultivation had once passed through its living ledger. When the vine went dormant, the elders built modern accounting systems around it, like building a new office over an old well. But the founder's clause had never been removed. If the vine woke, it could compare what was promised, what was purchased, what was delivered, and what actually reached the roots. A farmer knows the difference between rain on a roof and water in the soil. So did the vine. I stood there in the glowing dark, laughing and shaking, while 6 years of my ignored procurement notes rustled around me like angry birds. Then the message mirror lit up. Varus. Of course. Elian, his voice snapped. Why did my office receive a root irregularity notice? I looked at the vine. The gold line brightened. I said, probably because you are the greenhouse authority holder. What did you do? Maintenance. Do not play clever with me. I am not playing. My seal just burned my desk. That was new. How badly? Elian. I only ask for documentation. He made a sound like a kettle being strangled. You will come to my office immediately. I am not authorized to leave Greenhouse 9 for administrative consultation without your written permission. Silence. Then dangerously quiet, he said, I am giving you permission. Please send it through the proper channel. He cut the connection. I copied the call time into my ledger. 2:17 after midnight. Missed continuity audit window, 6 days, 17 hours remaining. Foundervine response, confirmed. Director emotional state, educational. By morning, Varus had sent 3 disciples to fetch me. I handed each one a copy of his own written restriction. They left annoyed. At noon, Elder Wren sent a message. Elder Wren was the medicinal garden overseer, 72 years old, silver-haired, permanently smelling of mint smoke, and famous for never involving himself in office drama until it threatened his tea supply. His message was short. Explain. I replied with 12 attachments. Soil reports. Budget transfers. Rejected recommendations. Photographs of herb beds. The continuity clause. And the daily report Varus had approved without reading. Elder Wren did not respond for 2 hours. Then the Sect Council scheduled an emergency greenhouse review for the next morning. Varus arrived at Greenhouse 9 before sunset, alone this time. No floating mirror. No disciples. Just him, pale and furious, standing in the doorway while I watered ash clover with a cracked clay cup. You should have told me about the clause, he said. I stared at him. I did. You should have insisted. You told me to stop talking. You knew this would happen. No, I said, I knew it could happen, there is a difference. His hand clenched around the living seal hanging from his belt. The wood had darkened, fine gold veins now ran through it, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. What does it want, he asked. The vine. The ledger, the notices, the seal, whatever you woke. It wants reconciliation. His face tightened. With what? I looked at the dead-looking vine, the cheap herbs, the damp glass, the 6 years of records stacked on my desk. Everything. The countdown should have scared me more than it did. 5 days until the continuity audit window closed. 4 days until the quarterly Sect finance review. 3 days until the Medicinal Garden Council had to certify planting resources for the spring cultivation cycle. And because the universe enjoys seasoning disaster, 2 days until the Sect master returned from a mountain retreat where he had been meditating on humility. I hoped it had gone well. Varus tried to fix things the way spoiled men fix things. He added money. Not to the problem, to the appearance of the problem. He ordered 20 barrels of high-grade spirit fertilizer, 12 jade irrigation bells, 3 imported sun crystals, and a team of noble gardeners who arrived wearing white gloves and expressions of sacred disappointment. The purchase order hit my mirror at breakfast because Greenhouse 9 was still listed as the receiving site. Total cost 4,800 mid-grade spirit stones. Authorized by Varus Lorne. Purpose, emergency Foundervine stabilization. I rejected receipt. Not the shipment receipt. There is a difference. The delivery team arrived anyway, 6 carts deep, blocking the western path while outer disciples craned their necks. The lead gardener, Master Pell, looked at my ash clover beds as if I had planted insults. You cannot stabilize an ancient vine with kitchen compost, he said. Correct, I said, I am stabilizing the soil. The vine requires pure inputs. The vine spent 143 years being killed by pure inputs. His nostrils flared. Behind him, the carts hummed with expensive mana, the barrels were lacquered, the jade bells chimed in synchronized arrogance, the sun crystals were bright enough to make the bitter bean leaves curl away. Master Pell handed me a receipt tablet. Sign. I read the item list. No. He blinked. I was told you were a clerk. I am. Then sign. I cannot certify these materials as appropriate for Greenhouse 9. He leaned closer. Director Lorne authorized them. And Director Lorne can receive them under his own seal. That was when Varus appeared, practically running. He had not dressed properly, his collar was crooked, his hairpin was upside down. I cherished that. What is the delay? He demanded. Elian refuses receipt, Master Pell said with the outrage of a man denied applause. Varus turned on me. Sign the delivery. No. His eyes flashed. You are still employed by this sect. Yes. Then obey. I was reassigned to maintenance of inactive legacy plant assets. Your written restriction bars me from unauthorized recovery activity. Signing for 4,800 mid-grade stones of emergency stabilization materials would imply authority I no longer possess. He opened his mouth. Closed it. The lead gardener looked between us, suddenly interested. I added also, applying high-grade fertilizer now would shock the root zone and risk killing the living response. Master Pell scoffed. You expect us to believe common compost revived a founder vine. No, I said, I expect the soil to prove it. That was milestone 4. Not because I won the argument. Because the ancient vine sent one thin tendril through the soil and wrapped it around the bitter bean root. Everyone saw it. A black thread no thicker than twine, sliding out from the dead trunk and touching the cheap field herb like an old friend. The courtyard went silent. The jade bells stopped chiming. My mana core expanded so fast I had to grip the table. Capacity, 412 units. Root sense range, 40 paces. New ability, nutrient memory. I could taste what every plant nearby had been fed for the last season. The noble gardeners smelled like powdered pearl, imported dew, and professional insecurity. Varus whispered, what did you do? I said crop rotation. Nobody liked that answer. The founder vine did. By that evening, 3 more tendrils had emerged. By midnight, the root ledger produced its first discrepancy report. It appeared in the air above Greenhouse 9 in golden script, visible from the western lecture halls. Resource discrepancy detected. Foundervine recovery allocation, last 6 fiscal years. Approved, 31,200 mid-grade spirit stones. Delivered to root network, 4,906. Unreconciled variance, 26,294. Responsible authority pending confirmation. The entire sect saw it. You have never experienced office gossip until you have seen 300 disciples trying to pretend they are not reading glowing fraud allegations in the sky. Varus sent me 11 messages in 40 minutes. I answered one. Elian, come to my office. I replied, please submit a formal request. He replied, this is an emergency. I replied, yes. Then I muted the mirror for sleep. That was malicious compliance at its purest. Not sabotage, not revenge, just the exact boundaries he had demanded returned neatly wrapped. The next morning, Finance tried to intervene. Finance had ignored my reports for years, which meant they now arrived in Greenhouse 9 carrying apology pastries. 3 senior accountants stood by my desk, looking at the vine, the ledgers, and the golden discrepancy hovering above the roof. The oldest one, Clerk Saven, cleared his throat. Junior Clerk Moss. Temporary caretaker Moss, I corrected. His smile twitched. Of course, we need access to your historical procurement files. My old files were transferred to Director Lorne. Yes, but we understand you kept duplicates. I kept personal working notes. Excellent, we will need those. Under what authority? He looked surprised. Finance people hate that question when they are not the ones asking it. Under sect necessity. Please provide a signed retrieval order. Salvan's expression tightened. This is not the time for obstruction. I agree. We are facing a major audit exposure. I agree. Then help us. I folded my hands. I submitted 86 variance notices over 6 years. Finance rejected 59, ignored 21, and returned 6 for tone adjustment. I am happy to assist once legal confirms whether my notes are personal property, protected whistleblower material, or sect records previously deemed irrelevant. Lysa, who had slipped in quietly with a stack of forms, made a small coughing sound that might have been laughter. Savan saw her and aged 5 years. Records is involved, he asked. Lysa smiled. Records was always involved, that is what makes us records. By noon legal was involved too. By dusk Elder Wren arrived in person. He stood before the ancient vine for a long time, one hand behind his back, mint smoke curling from his pipe. You used ash clover, he said. Yes. And bitter bean. Yes. And muleleaf rootstock. Yes. His mouth twitched. The founder's manual recommends all 3. I looked at him. That was the first I had heard of it. Elder Wren glanced at me sideways. Page 87. The manual has been out of circulation for a century because the noble gardeners considered it vulgar. Of course they did. Nothing offends inherited status like discovering the founder agreed with peasants. He walked to the vine and bowed. The tendrils shifted toward him, cautious but not hostile. Then he turned to me. Can you keep it alive? With authority, yes. With budget? That would help. With interference? No. He nodded once. Then Varus stormed in. I had to admire the timing, terrible but dramatic. You cannot discuss greenhouse authority with him, Varus snapped. He is not the director. Elder Wren looked at him, the way old men look at mold on fruit. No, you are. That landed exactly where it needed to. The golden discrepancy above the roof pulsed. Responsible authority pending confirmation. Varus swallowed. My uncle will resolve this. Elder Wren tapped ash from his pipe. Your uncle is currently descending the mountain into a sect-wide fraud notice bearing his family name. I suspect he will have thoughts. Varus looked at me. For the first time since he stole my budget, he looked afraid. Not regretful. That would have required character. Afraid. Elian, he said, softer now, we can correct the paperwork. I almost laughed. Instead I said, which paperwork? His jaw worked. The budget transfer, the demotion, the restriction notice, we can restore your title. My title is not the problem. Then what do you want? That question should have felt satisfying. It did not. Because people like Varus always ask what you want only after they have taken everything they thought mattered. I thought of Tavi coughing silver dust, Mara choosing between medicine and rice. 6 years of cold tea, late reports, and elders calling me field blood like soil was something shameful instead of the reason they ate. I said, I want the continuity audit completed publicly. Varus went pale. No. The vine's tendrils tightened around the trellis. I felt my core settle. Milestone 5. Capacity 480 units. Root ledger cultivation, second layer complete. New ability, sealed testimony resonance. That meant if I spoke a documented truth within range of the root ledger, the ledger could confirm whether records supported it. I did not need to shout. I did not need to accuse. I only needed the right room. Fortunately, the sect council had already booked one. The emergency review took place in the Hall of Green Accounts, which sounded peaceful until you noticed the oath chains carved into the walls. Every major sect department had a seat. Medicinal gardens, finance, records, legal, outer affairs, disciplinary hall, procurement, noble cultivation strategy. Which was just Varus and 2 exhausted assistants trying not to make eye contact with anyone. The sect master sat at the head of the long jade table. Master Orvin Lorne looked like an older, sharper version of his nephew. Silver robes, calm face, hands folded. The kind of man who could say mistakes were made so elegantly that the mistakes felt unemployed. Varus stood to his right, wearing formal robes and a panic sweat shine no amount of talisman powder could hide. I stood at the other end of the table in my patched greenhouse coat. My boots were clean. Mostly. Lysa stood behind me with records authority. Auntie Sen was not allowed in the chamber, but she had sent a lunch bundle wrapped in kitchen cloth with a note that said, "Do not let perfumed idiots rush you." I kept it in my pocket like a blessing. The ancient vine had sent one tendril through a ceremonial soil basin in the center of the table. Its black wood rested there quietly, gold veins pulsing every few breaths. Nobody called it dead anymore. The sect master began smoothly. This council recognizes the unusual activation of a dormant founder asset. We also recognize that preliminary discrepancy displays may create confusion before proper context is established. That was a beautiful sentence. It meant, please stop reading the fraud in the sky. Elder Ren sipped tea. Lysa opened 3 ledgers at once. I said nothing. The sect master looked at me. Caretaker Moss. Not junior clerk. Not Elian. Caretaker. Progress in the smallest possible denomination. You were assigned to Greenhouse 9 after an internal restructuring, is that correct? Yes. And after that reassignment, you initiated unauthorized recovery activity on a founder asset. Varus inhaled slightly. There it was. The frame. If they could make the vine's activation my unauthorized act, they could muddy the liability. Maybe blame me for unstable procedures. Maybe call the discrepancy report contaminated. I looked at the vine. Then at the sect master. No. A murmur moved around the table. He raised one eyebrow. No. I performed maintenance of an inactive legacy plant asset as assigned. I used unrestricted waste materials, expired seeds, cafeteria compost, and manual aeration. I submitted daily reports to Director Lorne under his required format. He approved them. The vine pulsed. 3 ledger pages rose from Lysa's stack and hovered in the air. Approval seal, Varus Lorne. Maintenance Report 1. Maintenance Report 2. Maintenance Report 3. The sect master's eyes shifted to his nephew. Varus said quickly, I was not informed those actions could revive the vine. I nodded, correct, you prohibited recommendations. The air changed. Lysa produced the restriction notice. The vine glowed brighter. Director instruction, no recommendations, no budget requests, no unauthorized recovery attempts, no contact with records, finance, or medicinal elders without written permission. Elder Ren's mouth hardened. The sect master's calm thinned by 1 layer. Varus said that was a standard efficiency directive. I said it was not standard, I checked. The vine pulsed. Records confirmation, no matching directive issued in previous 20 years. Someone from legal made a small, wounded noise. The sect master leaned forward. Caretaker Moss, are you alleging intentional misconduct? This was the dangerous part. Powerful organizations love misconduct when it is vague. Vague misconduct can be investigated forever. Vague misconduct can be regrettable. Vague misconduct can retire quietly. I did not give them vague. I am stating documented facts, I said. The Greenhouse Recovery Fund of 9,600 mid-grade spirit stones was reduced to 300 under Director Lorne's authority. The removed funds were reclassified as decorative elite cultivation infrastructure. My demotion was filed as performance-related using a non-standard category. My continuity audit warning was ignored. Director Lorne accepted the living greenhouse seal and did not complete the required audit within the 15-day window. The vine's tendril lifted. Gold script appeared above the table. Statement supported. The hall went silent. Varus's face twisted. This is absurd, he is manipulating the ledger. Elder Ren set his cup down. The founder's root ledger predates your family's appointment by 4 centuries. Varus snapped, it is a plant. I said yes, that is why it understands fertilizer better than you. Lysa closed her eyes for half a second. I probably should not have said it. I do not regret it. The sect master's voice cooled. Enough. He turned to finance. Explain the variance. Clerk Saven stood with the posture of a man wishing his ancestors had chosen fishing. The preliminary variance is accurate within a margin of 3%. Over 6 fiscal years, 31,200 mid-grade spirit stones were approved for founder vine preservation, dormant root network inspection, and associated medicinal garden stabilization. Delivery records confirm only 4,906 mid-grade stones of equivalent material reached Greenhouse 9 or connected beds. And the rest? Savin swallowed. Diverted through approved sub-accounts. Approved by whom? He looked at Varus. Then at the Sect master. Then at the ledgers, which were glowing like judgmental suns. Multiple authorities. The room understood. Varus had not created the rot. He had inherited it, benefited from it, and then stupidly signed his name on the oldest root. That was his flaw, not evil genius, not dark ambition. Vanity. He wanted a budget to decorate his pavilion and a demotion to prove noble blood mattered more than competence. He never asked why a dead greenhouse had such a large preservation fund. He never wondered who had been drinking from a pipe that led nowhere. He saw free money. He took it. That was enough. The Sect master tried one more angle. Caretaker Moss, you had knowledge of these discrepancies before the reassignment. Yes. Why did you not escalate? Lysa's fingers tightened around her ledger. I felt every rejected warning in my core. 86 of them. One by one they warmed like coals. I did, I said. The vine answered. Pages rose. Report 1 root tonic mismatch. Report 7 missing copper salt delivery. Report 12 unauthorized seed substitution. Report 19 inflated jade sprinkler maintenance. Report 33 dormant asset billing conflict. Report 48 repeated variance pattern. Report 72 recommendation for cross-department audit. Report 86 urgent warning regarding Greenhouse 9 resource channel integrity. Each page bore my seal. Each page bore a rejection, return, or silence mark from someone higher. My cultivation core opened. Milestone 6. Capacity 600 units. Root sense range entire hall. New ability variance bloom. The vine responded to my records and grew. Not violently, not like an attacking beast, it simply unfolded. A thin green shoot emerged from the black wood in the basin, then another. Then 5, small leaves, pale gold at the edges opened under the council's horrified stare. The hall of green accounts filled with the smell of rain on warm soil. For one impossible moment, every elder in that room looked like a child watching a seed sprout. Then the root ledger projected the final line. Continuity audit overdue. Current responsible authority, Varus Lorne. Prior discrepancy chain attached. Council review mandatory. No emergency override available. Varus stepped back. This is not my fault. That was the first honest thing he said all day. Not morally honest. Emotionally honest. He truly believed responsibility should not attach to him just because he signed for it. The Sect master closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was no longer looking at a nephew, he was looking at exposure. Director Lorne, he said, each word polished flat, you are suspended from Greenhouse Authority pending full investigation. Varus stared, Uncle. Sect Master Orvin corrected. That cut deeper than any sword. Legal moved immediately, that is how you know things are serious. Legal never moves quickly unless the floor is already on fire. Varus's seal was removed, his access tablets were frozen, his assistants were ordered to preserve all correspondence. Finance requested emergency protection from disciplinary hall. Records began duplicating everything in triplicate because Lysa believed in beauty. Then Elder Wren asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Who holds Greenhouse Authority now? The Sect master looked at me. I could see the calculation in his eyes. Not gratitude. Need. That was fine, need was more reliable. Caretaker Moss, he said, given your unusual success, the council requests that you resume temporary management of Greenhouse 9 and stabilize the founder vine. Requests. That word mattered. I said under what title? Authority and compensation. A few elders stiffened. I continued before they could remember how to be offended. My previous title was Junior Procurement Clerk at 28 low-grade spirit stones per month. My current title is Temporary Caretaker at 11. The Emergency Stabilization Materials Director Lorne attempted to order cost 4,800 mid-grade spirit stones and were inappropriate. I can stabilize the vine for less than 6% of that amount, but I will not do it under a demotion notice without audit protection, or while my family medicine obligations are in jeopardy because of an unlawful salary cut. The hall was very quiet. The sect master said, "State your terms." So I did. First, rescind the performance demotion publicly. Second, appoint me as certified Foundervine Restoration Manager with independent procurement authority limited to Greenhouse 9 and connected root channels. Third, salary of 90 low-grade spirit stones per month, retroactive to the demotion date. Fourth, medical stipend of 40 stones per month for immediate family curse treatment. Fifth, all future recovery orders require dual sign-off from records and medicinal gardens, not noble cultivation strategy. Sixth, my historical reports become protected audit evidence, not disciplinary material. Someone from Noble Strategy whispered 90. I looked at him. The jade bells cost more than my annual salary. He stopped whispering. The sect master's jaw tightened, and if the council declines. I looked at the founder vine. Its new leaves trembled. I will continue maintaining the asset under my current written duties, I said. No recommendations, no recovery activity, no unauthorized consultation. Elder Wren coughed into his sleeve. Lysa smiled at her ledger. The sect master understood. He had inherited a living founder asset that could expose decades of resource theft. He could either pay the underqualified peasant clerk who had revived it with compost, or he could let the vine keep asking questions in public. He chose compost. People think the most satisfying part of revenge is the public fall. It is not. The most satisfying part is the week after, when everyone who ignored you suddenly learns your office hours. My message mirror cracked from overuse. Finance called first. Then legal. Then medicinal gardens. Then disciplinary hall. Then 3 elders who had definitely called me field blood at least once but now addressed me as Restoration Manager Moss with the delicate politeness of men approaching a sleeping bear. Varus called 17 times. I answered none. He sent one written message. Elian, this has gone too far. We should discuss a mutual correction before permanent damage is done. I forwarded it to legal under possible interference with protected audit evidence. Lysa said that was excessive. Then she added a timestamp and filed it properly. The collapse spread in clean, logical steps. First, finance froze every sub-account connected to Greenhouse 9. That locked 18,400 mid-grade spirit stones across 7 departments. Then the root ledger identified 12 false delivery confirmations. That suspended 3 vendors. Then Medicinal Gardens discovered that 2 rare herb shortages blamed on weather imbalance were actually caused by spirit water diversion to private noble beds. That caused Elder Wren to say one sentence in council that made 3 stewards resign before dinner. I never heard the full sentence. I regret that. By day 4, the sect master announced an internal purification review. That was sect language for "we are pretending this audit was our idea." By day 6, Varus lost his director title. By day 9, his orchid pavilion was dismantled. The jade mist sprinklers were reassigned to seedling recovery. The ceremonial pond shaped like his family crest became a compost tea basin. I admit that one felt personal in a very healing way. The founder vine improved steadily. Not dramatically, real recovery is not dramatic. It is tiny changes repeated without applause. First week, 8 new leaves. Second week, root respiration stabilized. Third week, graft union held. Fourth week, first tendril reached the old trellis. I used ash clover, bitter bean, muley leaf support grafts, controlled watering, shade cloth, and 3 carefully measured applications of diluted spirit compost. Total cost after 30 days, 283 low-grade spirit stones. Not mid-grade. Low. Master Pell visited once and stood silently for 10 minutes. Then he asked why bitter bean. I explained. He listened. That surprised me. A month earlier I would have enjoyed humiliating him, but humiliation is cheap fertilizer, it makes weeds grow. So I showed him the root channels. I showed him how compacted mana behaved like compacted soil. I showed him how the founder's manual matched principles farmers used without fancy names. He came back 2 days later without white gloves. That was how I knew he might be salvageable. Not everyone who underestimated me became an enemy. Some people had simply been trained badly by a system that rewarded polished ignorance. Varus was not one of those people. He tried to blame his assistants, the root ledger rejected it. He tried to claim my reports were unclear, records produced summaries with highlighted action items. He tried to say the budget transfer had been verbally approved by the Sect master. Legal asked why he had not filed the approval token. He said he misplaced it. The oath walls in the hearing chamber turned red. That part I did see. It was tasteful. No screaming, no lightning, just red walls, 5 silent elders, and Varus realizing that lies sound different when architecture is listening. His final penalty came 42 days after my demotion. He was stripped of administrative authority for 8 years, fined 3,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and assigned to outer agricultural service under supervision. Not prison. Not exile. Worse for him. Work. Real work. He had to spend 2 planting seasons learning soil preparation from the same outer field crews he used to mock. Auntie Sen saw him carrying manure baskets one morning and sent me a paper crane that said, "Your noble boy has discovered fragrance." I laughed so hard I spilled tea on a root chart. The sectmaster offered me a private apology. Private apologies are what powerful people offer when public accountability is too expensive. I declined. Politely. The next council meeting, he issued a formal correction stating that my demotion had been improper, my warnings had been documented, and my restoration work had preserved a founder asset. He did not look happy. That was fine. I was not collecting his happiness. I was collecting leverage, salary, and medical stability. Mara cried when I sent the first stipend. Tavi's healer upgraded his medicine from diluted moon syrup to proper silver lung decoction. Within 3 weeks, his coughing fits dropped from 9 a night to 2. Within 2 months, Mara wrote that he had run across the courtyard without stopping. I kept that letter under my teapot too. Different kind of bill. The good kind. My own cultivation changed as the vine recovered. At 60 days, my mana capacity reached 720 units. At 90 days, I broke into Foundation Mist level 5 without taking a single combat pill. At 100 days, the founder vine produced 1 tiny green gold bud. The entire sect treated it like a miracle. I treated it like a plant doing what plants do when people stop being idiots near its roots. Elder Ren laughed when I said that. Then he gave me access to the founder's manual. Page 87 did recommend ash clover, bitter bean, and muley leaf. Page 88 recommended humility before soil. I considered framing it and mailing it to Varus. I did not. Growth requires restraint. Mostly. I did of Lysa make 3 certified copies. 6 months after Varus stole my budget, the founder vine bore fruit. Only 9 grapes. Tiny gold-veined, no larger than pearls. The sect held a ceremony with incense, music, and enough speeches to make the vine consider dormancy again. The elders praised tradition. Finance praised transparency. Legal praised procedural clarity. The sect master praised the collective wisdom of verdant ash. I stood beside the trellis with dirt under my nails and let them perform dignity at each other. Then Elder Ren stepped forward and ruined the mood beautifully. He announced that all 9 founders' grapes would be entered into a protected allocation ledger, with 1 reserved for medicinal research, 2 for sect emergency reserves, 3 for disciples recovering from failed breakthroughs, and 3 sold at auction to fund agricultural reforms. Not noble cultivation reforms. Agricultural reforms. New soil labs. Disease monitoring. Fair procurement controls. And a permanent curse treatment fund for low-rank employees' families. The hall applauded because the founder vine was watching. I appreciated the support, however motivated. After the ceremony, the sect master approached me near the greenhouse doors. "Restoration Manager Moss," he said, "the council is prepared to offer you a broader role." I waited. Director of Root Systems and Medicinal Procurement, full department authority, 2 assistants, salary of 200 low-grade stones per month, housing upgrade, council access. A year earlier, I would have thought that was victory. A title. Money. A better office. The right to sit at tables where people used to discuss my work without inviting me. I thought of the old me in another world, standing in a failed field after a disease I had warned about spread because the landowner wanted one more season of the same crop. I thought of this world's version of me, young and feverish, signing a debt contract because nobody explained the interest. I thought of Varus with his boots on my ledger. Then I looked at the founder vine, alive because it had been removed from the hands of people who saw roots as decoration. I will accept, I said, with conditions. The sect master's eyelid twitched. To his credit, he did not sigh. State them. No noble exemption from soil training, no budget transfer without root channel impact review. Procurement staff can appeal unsafe orders to records without retaliation, and Greenhouse 9 remains under restoration protocols, not ceremonial management. He was silent for 5 breaths. Then he said, "You negotiate like a merchant." No, I said, I negotiate like someone who has cleaned up after merchants. He accepted. Not because he had transformed into a better man. Because the founder vine shifted behind me, and every elder in the sect had learned to respect plants with documentation. I built the new department slowly. Lysa became compliance lead for botanical records. She pretended the promotion annoyed her, then bought new spectacles with silver frames. Auntie Sen became official compost supply supervisor, a title she called nonsense while threatening 3 kitchen apprentices with a ladle for contaminating citrus peels with salt ash. Master Pell started a grafting program for noble gardeners and field workers together. The first class was awkward. The second was useful. By the fourth, inner disciples were arguing over rootstock compatibility with the passion they usually reserved for sword rankings. As for me, I kept my old cracked teapot. I kept the debt receipt. I kept the first rejection notice Varus sent me. Not because I needed bitterness. Because memory is a tool, and I had learned to label my tools. Varus completed his first planting season in the outer fields with terrible evaluation scores. Too impatient. Poor listening. Overwatered seedlings. Improved manure handling. That last note was from Auntie Sen. I chose to believe it was sincere. One afternoon, almost a year after the demotion, I found him outside Greenhouse 9. He looked thinner, tanned, less polished, still proud but worn at the edges. For a moment, I thought he had come to apologize. He had not. Not exactly. He stared at the founder vine through the glass and said, "Was it really just farming?" I could have given him a speech. I could have told him about soil microbes, mana residue, graft unions, nitrogen cycles, root memory, and the sacred arrogance of living things that refuse to die on schedule. Instead, I said no. He looked at me. It was farming plus paperwork. He gave a short, bitter laugh. Then he walked away. That was enough. I did not need him destroyed. I needed him unable to harm people from a chair he had not earned. There is a difference. The founder vine grew over the western trellis by the end of that year. Its leaves shaded my office in summer. Its roots fed the ledger and the ledger fed my cultivation in slow, honest increments. I never became a sword saint. I never split a mountain. I never won a tournament while 10 jade beauties gasped from the balcony. I became something much more dangerous to people like Varus Lorne. I became the person who knew where the resources were supposed to go. And I became strong enough to make the records answer when they did not. So when new disciples ask why the director of root systems still teaches first-year clerks how to smell bad soil, I tell them the truth. Power does not always arrive as lightning. Sometimes it arrives as a rejected memo, a cheap herb, a living root hair, and one quiet worker who finally stops protecting arrogant people from the consequences they signed for. They thought field dirt made me weak. They forgot every sect, every fortune, and every noble bloodline eventually has to answer to the roots.